Episode 3 Hawkeye. The London and North Eastern Railway was one of the so-called Big Four companies, formed during the 1923 Grouping Act in Britain. In this form, with engines from the North Eastern region and Great Northern Railways, it lasted a mere 25 years, but left an everlasting impression of luxury, prestige and speed. 40 years after the end of British mainline steam, these are the stories they tell. The London and North Eastern and Great Western Railways have always been great competitors, dating back to a time when their railways were famed for their luxury and legendary for their speed. The 1928 exchange trials had seen a Great Western triumph, but arguably this spurred the LNER into creating a certain class of high-speed steam locomotive, the Gresley A4 Pacific. The yard's resident A4 was Sir Ralph. Sir Ralph was not the original engine, rather an engine named in honour of another engine, a curious arrangement that none of the other engines were aware of. Sir Ralph had recently run hot at speed and failed at a station in the central region. After Sir Ralph had been towed from Market Harbour to Doncaster Works, I found myself with an engine problem. While I had of course procured Herbert for the yard, and I had Alan and Stephen of course, there was too much work between the engines of the yard for them to cope. Therefore, I made the necessary arrangements for another engine to work at the yard, temporarily. The only engine available came from the Western region, and so I decided to give the duties of Sir Ralph to Herbert, Herbert's to Stephen, and the visiting engine would do Stephen's shunting for him in turn. It was perhaps ironic that I seemed to lose a Gresley streak and gain some Western muscle. The engine arrived 2 hours earlier than expected, and was already shunting the trucks when I went to leave that evening. "Good evening," he said, bustling up to me. I was intrigued. This was probably the first time since Stephen had arrived on the yard all those years ago that an engine had come to say good evening to me personally. "Good evening," I replied. "What is your name?" "Hawksworth, sir." "After my designer," he replied. "But everyone just calls me Hawk, sir. Shorter that way, sir." "Why, we all have short names, sir, back home, sir. My friend Montague, for instance." "That'll do," I laughed. "Hawk it is, then. Carry on, Hawk. You're doing a fine job with those trucks." "Thank you, sir." "Right away, sir," the engine said, and puffed away. I was impressed, but Alan less so. "I couldn't find my goods train this morning," he complained to Herbert. "You always put it near the coal line. The Western engine put it near the goods shed." "Naturally," Stephen said, "as I hadn't loaded your train yet." "Oh," Alan said. "Well, fair enough. Still, he doesn't talk much, does he?" "Not all engines are chatterboxes like us," said Stephen. "Some engines work better if they concentrate on the job at hand, and besides, he's busy. I'm sure he'll talk to you later on when he takes a break." Alan remained dubious. That evening, Hawk joined the other engines in the yard. "So I said to my driver, there's no way Newcastle will win the cup this year," Alan laughed. "It'll be City's year, I know it will. Unless, of course, my friend Sunderland has anything to do with it," Stephen said, and Herbert interjected. I took a football special home once. I think Norwich took it to London, and I took it back." Hawk was puzzled. "Is it football or engines?" he asked. Alan smiled. "Oh, both. One of the engine classes we work with sometimes were named after famous football teams." "Ah," said Hawk, "like Swindon." Everyone, even Stephen, burst out laughing. Hawk looked rather hurt. Alan stopped laughing and explained. "We're not trying to insult you," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I'm sure Swindon are a great team, but they're not really in the running for the cup." "And why not?" Hawk asked. "Everyone has a shot at it." Stephen smiled. "Well said. That's the spirit." Alan snorted, and Hawk gave him a sidelong glance. "You know, we have a saying at Paddington," Hawk said. "There's the wrong way to go about things, and the Great Western way. I'm Great Western and—" "No, you're not," Alan laughed. "No more than we are LNER." He looked to Stephen for support, but Stephen was looking thoughtful. "Well, we are all British Railways," he said at last, and Alan smirked. "However," Alan stopped smirking, "we are what we think we are." Alan was taken aback. "It says on your tanks, and your tender, property of British Railways, doesn't it?" "Well, yes," Stephen said, "but I'm not talking in a tangible sense. I am an XLNER engine, and I look to uphold the values it stood for, much like Hawke here. Just because something has gone physically, it doesn't mean it has disappeared entirely." Alan shrugged off some steam. "Fair enough, but I was talking about football," he said, and Stephen laughed. Hawke kept quiet, and listened to the engines reminisce about matches they'd heard, or even, in Stephen's rare case, seen. He went to sleep, thinking about Swindon Town, and how one day he'd like to see them play. Every Tuesday morning, when the air is fresh and the sun barely above the horizon, a special train of vans comes from the coast to the town just outside Alan's yard. It had been Herbert's job of late, but with Sir Ralph away being fixed, he had been pulling the fast passenger trains instead. It was therefore down to Stephen to pull the goods train, along the branch line, and to the local towns and villages. When it arrived, early that morning, Stephen and Alan were still asleep, while Hawke was busy arranging the yard. Hawke arranged the train, and left it for Stephen to take, once it had been loaded. Of course, the goods manager had forgot that Herbert was not pulling the train, and had Hawke add extra vans onto the already heavy train. Herbert had already left with the morning stopping train, so there was no chance of re-rostering the engines. Stephen buffered up to his train. "Goodbye, Hawke," he called. "I'll see you this evening." And Hawke watched as he puffed away, hardly struggling at all. This was because the goods siding is on a downward slope, so the weight of the train was not on Stephen just yet. Presently, Stephen came to the hill, and found his wheels slipping and his pistons gasping. "It's never been this bad before," he gasped to his driver. "This train is so heavy." And before he could do anything about it, he had stopped on the hill, panting heavily. The guard immediately telephoned for help, and Stephen's driver carefully backed them down to the bottom of the hill, and into a siding. Stephen, grateful for the rest and the drink, was worried. "What happens if I do that again?" he said. "Won't happen again," said his driver. "We're getting a banker this time." They waited for another train to pass, which turned out to be Herbert's stopping train. As he passed, he whistled loudly to them. "Go it, Stephen!" he called out, and then, piston snorting, Herbert was gone. Presently, Stephen's banker arrived, in the shape of a very worried-looking Western engine. Stephen was glad to see Hawke, who explained about the mix-up. "It seems the Great Western Way let you down," Hawke said miserably. Stephen laughed. "My old wheezing cylinders and clanking side gear let me down," he said. "What say you, Hawke? Shall we take this hill together?" "Aye," Hawke replied, but this time as British Railway engines. Stephen whistled to Hawke, Hawke whistled to Stephen, and the heavy train began to climb the hill. Hawke pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed, and steam bursting from his cylinders helped Stephen over the top and down into the tunnel the other side. As they puffed wearily out of the tunnel and stopped at the level crossing, there was a loud whistle, a rush of wind, and Alan had rushed past them with the midday express. That evening, in the shed, Alan heard all about it. "Well, he did make up for his mistake," he said to Stephen. "That takes real guts, so he can't be all bad." Stephen smiled. He was so tired he fell asleep. Alan suppressed a laugh and simmered. "Is he okay?" Hawke asked. "He'll be fine," Alan said with a smile. "So I heard you did well today, Little Western." Hawke bristled. "Little?" But he saw Alan laughing again. "You're okay, Great Western," Alan said. "So what's Swindon like?" Hawke forgot to be cross. "It's really big, lots of engines, everywhere, and you have to wheesh really loudly to be heard sometimes," he said, and the two engines talked into the night. One Western, one Eastern, but both resoundingly British.